Hey guys, welcome back to Getting Out of the Machine. My name is Henry Bingaman. I'm recording this from a hotel room in Austin, Texas. I'm out here this week working with my business coach slash therapist, Brent Charlton. I think he actually calls himself an executive coach. Now, Brent is ridiculously expensive, but I'm in my third year with him, and it's been enormously beneficial, so this is working for me. One of the things I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about is the head trash that we deal with. It's really incredibly easy to sabotage yourself and lose all your money if you're not careful. But also, I think entrepreneurs can be kind of obsessive people, and obviously that's beneficial in some ways. The drive for success is good. But you can also neglect a lot of other areas of your life in that pursuit, and you can end up more miserable than when you were broken just thinking about starting a business. And that misery makes you far less effective in every area of your life, especially your business. So that's what I'm out here working on, just clearing out some of my own head trash so I don't end up blowing up my life. Anyway, because of the travel and the fact that I really didn't have much time to work while I'm out here, I just pulled together some clips of interviews I've done with copywriters, and they're covering topics that I get asked about a lot. So this first clip is with April Dikeman, and she talks about how she made the leap and went full-time into copywriting. Before you struck out on your own, because I think that's the point, there's a lot of artists and people that have business ideas that want to get out there, but they have, I don't know if I can do it because I have kids. I don't know if I can do it because it's not going to be stable income. So what were some of your fears before you started out on your own versus the reality of the challenges you faced?
So I was terrified to leave my job, and I hated my job with a passion of 1,000 fiery suns. I mean, it was, Sunday night would roll around and I was just miserable thinking about having to go. And as much as I hated it, I was also terrified of quitting. So I had made this sort of pact with myself that when I made enough income on the side that could fully replace my salary, I was going to quit. And even then I was scared. And so there's part of me that was just dreaming of that day that I could walk into my boss's office and be like, by 2 weeks notice, I'm out of here, like, screw this. And at the same time, my stomach hurt walking in there and doing that. So in a lot of ways, it is a leap of faith. But now, once you're on the other side of it, now I'm actually scared to have a day job. So I feel like that's risky because now my entire income is dependent on this company and how the company's doing and what my boss thinks of how I'm doing. And if they decided that doesn't work, or if something happened and the revenue dropped and they looked at my salary and it's, a big one, I feel like I'd be on the chopping block. So it makes me really nervous now to think about putting all of that power with one person. And then if that happens, then what? If you're not doing anything on the side, that's just your entire income that's gone. And so I think it's hard to see when you haven't been on the other side of that. But once you've seen, not only do I feel more secure now, but things like health insurance and all these things that I worried about. Yes, it's expensive. It's not a fun expense, but I can always increase my income, which I couldn't do in a job. You basically have to go in and say like, well, I did a really good job. Would you like to give me some more money now? And then they're like, no, or, whatever they decide, and that's it. Whereas I don't feel that way now. If I need to make more money for something, I feel like that's something, that I'm capable of doing fairly easily. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people it is interesting being on one side and then the other. So before, I had the same thing. I recently just dropped my copywriting clients, like all of them. And that was a big leap of faith in some ways, is because, now it's all on me. Now I have to be my sole source of income. But I think once you have the skill of copywriting, you can always go back and get another client. Like, there's always going to be somebody willing to pay you. So I think building up that skill set is really valuable, no matter what you decide to do with it. So even if you're in a job now and you want to start, being an artist, a graphic designer, a copywriter, you can start building the skills like you did. And then you have a way to make money, even if you get fired. So I like that approach. This next clip is from an interview I did with one of my oldest friends in the copywriting industry, Roy Furr. Roy talks about how he discovered copywriting in the first place, and he took what he calls the chickenpreneur path over many years to actually go full-time. I thought this would make a good contrast to April because, they both had similar paths, but there were some key differences. So here's Roy.
So like my backstory, I kind of have that same. I think that a lot of people who become good copywriters, because you have to, on some level, be excited about the writing part, because that's so much of the time that we spend. To be successful at this, part of my background was thinking, yeah, I'm a writer too, like you, right? My minor was in writing. My minor was in English, like kind of generic English minor. My major was a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, which is about as marketable as a fiction writing degree, right? You have to get a master's or PhD if you want much work in psychology. So I got the best job that I could get at the time when I graduated, which was answering the angry customer service phone calls at the local gas company.
So it'll take some psychology just to manage your own brain.
So if you didn't pay your bill all winter and you needed somebody to call and yell at because your service got shut off on the first warm day of spring, hi, this is Roy with Aquila. But the cool thing was, like, I ended up working noon to 9 p.m. No choice of shifts. That's just where they stuck me. Just like, no choice for you, I'm sure, of flight routes and whatever.
No, yeah.
But like after 7 p.m., nobody wants to talk to the gas company. And I found this book called The Well-Fed Writer, which, if you're a writer and you're like, okay, well-fed plus writer, awesome. It's not the starving artist. And I fell down the rabbit hole of, he was actually disparaging. Like, I give that book a lot of credit for introducing me to copywriting, but he was like, I'm a freelance commercial writer and I write annual reports for publicly traded companies.
You remember who wrote it?
Yeah, Peter Bowerman.
I know that name.
Yeah,
it's probably because of the book.
Yeah, he did Well-Fed Writer Part 2, Well-Fed Self-Publisher. And for me, it was a good intro to the field. But he was disparaging these people who are like, they write sales letters and they get paid based on the royalty or based on the sales generated. And he's like, I could never do that. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, oh yeah, okay. And I'd done commission sales stuff, but it'd been like selling newspaper subscriptions. So, and I wasn't very good at it. But something excited me about this, like entrepreneurial direct response. So I got the bug that way. But for me, I saw it as my ticket to freedom that I wanted as much as anything, because he was talking about being this freelance commercial writer and having control of his schedule and having control of his time. And at the time, I was kind of like, I was in a giant call center with probably 60 plus reps in the call center, and it was unionized and there was no way to get paid more based on my performance. And I was similarly making about $20,000 a year and having people yell at me and no control over my schedule and any of that. And I had decided years before, just nod to getting out of the machine. I remember specifically going in, my mom was a computer programmer and did well as a computer programmer, but I remember going into her office on a weekend when she had a project that she was working on. And it's just this giant, it was like the epitome of the 90s workplace, right? It's this giant room with the fabric wall cubicles up 5.5 feet tall, and just the hum of computers, and it's floor after floor of this, right? And to me, that was the mission. I call it a cubicle farm. Not original terminology, right?
Corporate beehive is how I always picture it.
That's what it is. And you're just a worker bee. And I had no clue what I wanted to do, but I knew that I didn't want to do that. And so it wasn't until I found copywriting, which to me is still the most liberating single person career option that you can choose, right? Because it doesn't feel like one of those careers. But it wasn't until I found copywriting that I went from I know what I don't want to do to I know what I do want to do.
Did you have any so a lot of my friends at the time, they got degrees in computer science and, business, and a couple of them went to law school, a couple of them went to medical school. And so they were looking at me, as what are you doing in this scammy industry? What is this? You're writing junk mail. And did you feel any of that social pressure of the awkwardness of being in an industry that nobody else understood? Because I think a lot of people, they'll start doing copywriting and they'll see the potential of it, but then their peer group will be like, yeah, you can't do that, because peer groups tend to try to bring you back to the median, right?
Yes, very much so. So I took a little bit of a different route, kind of almost influenced by Mark Ford, Michael Masterson, like the chicken entrepreneur idea, right? So I knew that I wanted to do copywriting, but my timeline was, this was 2005. So 4 years before I met you, right? 2005, it was spring 2005 when I bought The Well-Fed Writer. And I think I ended up getting the Copywriter's Handbook at about the same time, and like really early stuff on copywriting, right? I knew I was getting married July 9th, 2005. And I knew that my wife was going to grad school, basically 3 weeks. We were going on a week and a half honeymoon. And a week and a half after that, we were moving to Oregon, right? And she was going to be getting a stipend as part of her PhD program. But like, she wasn't going to be earning much money, right? Like, she was getting her PhD, not getting rich. And so I knew we were moving across the country. We were going to have like a half income. So I knew that I needed a full-time income. And
a portable one at that.
Yeah, fairly portable. But I was like too afraid to start freelancing at the time. And so I started applying for marketing jobs. And I just knew, like, I wrote a cover letter that said, listen, I know my resume sucks for a marketing job. I know that nothing about this resume is good for a marketing job, but I know that this is what I want to do. I know that this is what I'm going to do. And if I make you successful, it's going to allow me to be successful in this. And so I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to work harder than anybody with more qualifications to make you successful. And I got a few job interviews based on, by the way, cover letters. If you are applying for anything, cover letters are super underrated. Like, most people who I've ever tried to hire, they don't even try with their cover letter. And they completely suck and you don't hire them. But cover letters can get you the job when your resume won't, at least get you the interview. So I got a bunch of interviews.
You think that was your first big piece of successful copywriting?
It was. And like, the person who hired me told me that multiple times. Like, he said, I would not have hired you if it weren't for your cover letter. He still like watches my episodes and reads my emails and stuff. Yeah. So I actually ended up with a full-time marketing job, and it was just like, I wanted to be a copywriter, and they gave me opportunities to be a copywriter. But then I was working inside the marketing department, and it was like a $2 million a year IT training publisher. And then in the next 3.5 years, we grew it to like, I think it was about 8 million when I left. And it was on a really good growth trajectory beforehand, but certainly a lot of this is stuff that happened. Like, I measured it, but I got involved with like database marketing and copywriting and helping run a marketing team and hiring marketers. And I got involved with the sales team and like all that stuff. Because I was too afraid to like go out and become a freelancer, right? So I accepted less freedom so that I could get more freedom later. And then went to AWAI, and a couple months later, like, they knew that I was on my way out again because I had a deadline. I had a deadline that my wife was finishing her PhD program, and we were going to move across the country again, and I was going to lose that job. So it was like, I better figure this out.
All right. So those first two clips, April and Roy, were in the vein of how to get into copywriting. This next one is with my friend and copywriting mentee, Sohail Shatur, because the next most common question I get after how do I get into copywriting is how do I get good at copywriting? So this is Sohail's path. How did you learn copywriting, first of all? Because that seems to be a big question that people ask me is like, what did you do to learn? What did you do to learn? And no matter how many books and courses I tell them, they're always asking more. They want more. So what did you do to get good at copywriting? And then how did you get your first client?
So, I mean, I got good at copywriting just from writing ads to promote my business when I was running the comedy show, right? Like, you learn very quickly that like there's two types of ads you can run in a very local community. It's either, hey, here's the same poster with the information, you just run that until everyone's seen it a million times and they eventually come to your show. Or you run a different ad every week featuring the headliner and what they've done, or you run clips of what the headliner or another featured comic's done on a different stage. Like, for example, I had one guy who was on Conan a few weeks before he headlined my show. So I'm posting the videos of him on Conan and being like, look, this guy's coming here. He's doing a 30-minute set. Come, it's a free show. So I was doing stuff like that. And, you just kind of learn what people want. Like you look at engagement stats and you go, oh, okay, people are really engaging with this sort of concept and this messaging. And then you just kind of tailor it from there. So that was kind of my foray into copy. This was before I knew what copywriting was. It was just like, oh, I need to write stuff on the ad so it does better. And then, then I was like, oh wait, people will pay me to do this? This is fun. I want to do more of that. Like that's kind of what it came down to. I had experimented with a lot of different businesses. So I've done everything. Like I had a drop shipping store. I had some other e-commerce stuff. Like I did print on demand. I tried running an agency for a bit, local lead generation, like literally everything under the sun you can imagine I did. Like even like arbitraging graphic design where like I'd get a client for like who'd want a logo and they pay like $100 and I'd go on Fiverr because I'm going to build it for $5 and just like arbitrage the difference. So like I always had these like little ways of making money online, largely because I hated going into an office, and like also I was extremely awkward and kept getting fired from jobs. So I knew that was not going to be the way. That was not going to be a career I could like do, because every time I opened my mouth, I ended up in like the office with HR. So
the life of a comedian.
Fortunately, I still have not fully like stamped that out of me, no matter how many years of therapy, but I just found like the right group of misfits who just like mostly ignore the things I say, which is like the best way to approach that. But anyway, I had done all these different things, and then I finally just made a decision. I was like, look, I'm going to keep experimenting with stuff where I have to commit to one thing. So I joined a mentorship program that was all about local lead generation and starting an agency. I was like, look, I don't need to do this forever. I was just like, I need a mentor to show me one path to making enough money that I don't keep experimenting with stuff, so that I'm not like having to work, like to bartend 4 nights a week just because I need money. I need one thing to make money, and then I can figure out what I want to do. And through that process, I started making money more consistently. The agency was growing. That was great. I didn't like any of that, but it was like, okay, there's money here. Now I have the freedom to think and explore. And he had mentioned something about writing copy, and I was like, what's that? And I started looking into it, and I was like, wait, this is actually what I want to do, because ever since I was a kid, like there were 2 things I was really good at: sales and writing, which like I'd been in sales since I was 15. Like that's what I did for work my entire life. Like my first job was going door to door, selling like lawn care stuff. So like aeration, which is where they put those like holes in your grass in the springtime. And then in the summer, I'd literally push a 1-ton cart full of tar, and like, 15, I'm like scrawny and like my voice is cracking. I'm like, can I spray your driveway? Like, but that was what I did. And I had to learn how to like create authority and confidence as a 15-year-old pushing a cart that weighed 10 times as much as I did. And so I liked sales. I always had, I always enjoyed that process, but sales is hard because it's always one-to-one. It doesn't really scale the same way. And I was like, wait, so I can write stuff. I don't have to like go out and about, and just by writing, I can still sell stuff. This is cool. And I only have to write the thing once, and I can sell it to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million people. And that's kind of was like, okay, so then all of these different parts of my life, my history, all of that stuff kind of came together. And I was like, okay, this seems like the logical next step. And that's kind of how I got into copywriting.
Next up is a clip from my conversation with direct marketing legend Brian Kurtz. A lot of people ask me how to come up with big ideas for promotion. So that's the core idea that you build a promotion around. Well, before you can find the big idea, you have to find what Gene Schwartz calls mass desire. Now, Brian is the publisher of Gene's book on this, Breakthrough Advertising. So he was the perfect person to talk to about what mass desire is, how to find it, and how to harness it.
Right. I know we could do a whole college course on breakthrough advertising. And actually, you have I just learned this, you do 3-week boot camps that really push people through it. So maybe we'll get people on the wait list for that after we're done talking here. But I want to talk about the 3, I think, most impactful concepts that I got out of it. Now, there's a lot of how-to and, the identification stuff and all that towards the end. But the 3 first chapters essentially are about mass desire, then the state of awareness, and the stage of sophistication. I hope I'm saying those right. So let's
levels or state. I forget which is which. One's levels, one's stage.
Yeah, one's levels. There's actually a quote from the mass desire thing that I thought really stood out, because what is mass desire is always a strange question. But Gene Schwartz defines it as we can define this mass desire quite simply. It is the public spread of a private one. So how do you kind of interpret that? How would you talk about the mass desire for people?
Yeah, I mean, I'll quote Gene again. He also says after that numerous times where, like, the copywriter doesn't create desire. The desire is already out there. It's how the copywriter can find it. And you have to go multiple levels beneath what you see in the world. You have to first observe. I mean, the desire is in the marketplace already. And so how do you bring it out in how you express, how you create copy or sell or write? And so I think that mass desire for me is not like this magic bullet. Like go back to Shark Tank. So the guy goes on to Shark Tank, the entrepreneur, and he says, I've got this widget and I know it's an $87 billion business. And a lot of times Mark Cuban's there and he goes, I'm out. Just the fact that it's like this big business and you want to get a little piece of it. Again, one way to do it. But how about instead of just identifying something that you think is a multi-billion-dollar universe or business, why not look closely at different areas where there's evidence of what people are buying, what they're doing, what they're reading. I mean, Gene was a purveyor of culture. When Gene died, the obituary for him was Gene Schwartz, art collector, dies. It wasn't a big headline, but it was a headline. It wasn't like a little small obituary. And he was a major art collector. Now, there's one paragraph in his obituary about his direct marketing, which is amazing considering what a legendary copywriter and marketer he was. And so, and the way I interpret that in terms of mass desire is that he understood that you must have, like, his favorite magazine to read was the National Enquirer, because that's the way he was looking at what he says. If you lose touch with what the country's thinking, you lose touch with your audience, you're finished, basically. So he was always looking at where the audiences were, what they were thinking, and then that's where, and then you can find the desire within that by identifying the levels of awareness and levels of sophistication within each of those universes of people. But that's when you do the deep digging. But you need to understand, like, what are people talking about? What are they interested in? Dan Kennedy took this to another level when he said you need to do marketing by walking around. You walk around, literally, you can walk around in Walmart and observe people and see what the people are doing. What are they thinking? John Carlton talks about this in terms of being mindful of everything around you. Like, there's no such thing as writer's block because there's ideas all around us. You have to pay attention to what's going on around you. I mean, I beat myself up when I say, whenever I think that I know what I'm going to write about each week for my blog. And all I have to do is just be mindful of what's around me. And I'll always come up with something. And so, so mass desire it's kind of like, it kind of means that it's mass market, or it's like, you can come up with a product that's going to sell billions of dollars immediately. You don't just go there. You have to slice and it talks about specialization versus commodities and all of that. That's important as well. And that's why when you're selling, like, people who come in with a product to Shark Tank that's clearly a commodity, that's going to be a lot less desirable than something that's going to be a specialty product. And you can create specialty out of commodity, and that's what makes it something more special. And then you have to go into the market and see what people can you find, the different strata of people that know that commodity, are less aware of that commodity, who are sophisticated in that commodity. And then you can come up with different levels. And then you might only want to go after one level of, like, a very sophisticated person who is dealing with a commodity on a different level. That's multiple. That's like playing, three-dimensional chess with copy and product. That's the way I see mass desire.
All right, final clip for this week. This is from my interview with copywriting legend David Deutsch. One of the common challenges I see with copywriters is that they write boring copy. But David's copy has personality that just jumps off the page. So here's David and I talking about how to get personality in your copy. How do you develop personality that you can put into copy?
I don't know. I think I've always been lucky that I've been able to make that connection, because I think a lot of what I teach people to do is how to connect with themselves in a way where they're writing from themselves, not writing from a preconceived notion of what something should sound like. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's partly that. It's partly being sort of funny, and witty. Fun, being funny gets you.
Always having a quick response that's humorous.
Yeah. Having a non-threatening sort of, mildly nebbishy look probably, helped us get in there. If I had been like, all right, we get in here, and, being able to probably argue my way into things. Well, it's not, they're obviously not getting ready. We won't be in the way. Well, you know what I mean? I kind of,
overcoming objections right there in real life.
Objections. Right. We'll be out of here. We'll be out of here in 15 minutes. A lot of it is kind of behavioral science in a certain way. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, that I always think of the main behavioral science thing is you ask a big ask. Right. And then you say, well, okay, if we can't do that, can we just like, can we go in for an hour? Right. And she's probably going to say no. So then I'll say, well, can we go in for 15 minutes? And maybe we can stretch it into a half hour.
Right. And you also use the because it's like, well, I'm just in Philadelphia for one day. I'll never have a chance to get back. There was that study that the fax machine in a corporate office. If you ask, can I use the fax machine? Like 5% of the people will let you. If you ask, can I use the fax machine because I need to? Like more than half of the people would let you.
Yeah.
Jump in line.
It's the word because is so powerful that just saying the word because, right? Just because I need to gets you something. And if you have real reasons, like I came from out of town, which had the benefit of being true, right?
Yeah.
I was never going to come back to, that particular museum.
Yeah, the art school museum. It's not like there's anything famous there. It was just an interesting art museum.
Yeah.
So
but putting it in your copy, it's just like, don't be afraid of it. Just write something. Write from your heart, right? Don't look at it like I'm going to publish it, right? Just do it for fun. Just do it for an experiment. Like, what if I just had to really write as myself? Right? Be funny, be outrageous, exaggerate it more, right? Try talking it even into a microphone. Sometimes that helps.
Yeah, I think people need to let themselves, when you're writing, you have to get in touch with your inner silliness a little bit, because otherwise you're too tight. Like a lot of writers, especially newer copywriters or business owners, when they're writing something that's really on the line, they feel like this is so important. I have to take it super seriously. And a lot of times just allowing yourself to be silly and loosening up and saying something goofy, even if you cut it later, it helps you add your own personality, because silliness is something that's different to each person. Like no two people are silly in the same way. So if you can allow yourself that, I think it's a nice little hack to kind of loosen up the copy a little bit.
It's funny that you say that, because I actually studied clowning. I've probably told you this story, but I studied clowning with this famous teacher of clowning in the Jean Lecoq School of Clowning in France. And basically his whole thing was that you have to find your inner clown. Like, Emmett Kelly, the sad clown, right? That was kind of his inner clown. Pee Wee Herman, right? He was great at that nebbishy character, right? If he tried to be Borat, it would never work, because that was Sacha Baron Cohen's clown, was the buffoon, right? Pee Wee Herman kind of found the clown that worked for him. So all he would have us do is get up on stage and try to be funny. And inevitably he would just go, boring, next, I'd rather watch a mime than watch you, go away. And gradually you just tried enough different things where people would laugh, and you were like, you found like your way of being funny. And maybe for some that's physical, maybe for some that's being silly, maybe for some that's being, slapstick, whatever it is.
Yeah, some people can make puns work. It's amazing. But
some people can make physical humor work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way of kind of getting in touch with your with your own personality, the clown
Yeah.
school. I've heard other people talk about doing improv to try to bring that stuff out of them.
Yeah, I did that too. That was torture.
Was it?
Yeah, this idea of just, say the first thing that comes into your mind, because we're writers. God knows what could come into our mind. That's horrifying. But it was very interesting, the whole yes and thing. You always and you can yes and yourself, right? You write something, you go, yes, and and blah 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 blah. Yes, and blah 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 blah. Anything can inspire you.
All right, guys, that's what I got for you this week. The next couple of weeks, we'll be back on track to doing interviews, so stay tuned. If you like this episode, rate, review, do all the cool stuff, share it with your friends. We're growing pretty fast in this podcast, and it's exciting, but if you can help us grow even more, I'd appreciate it. All right, talk to you next week.